Welcome, everybody, to the Cone of Shame Veterinary Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Andy Roark. Guys, if you like to see behind the scenes in vet medicine and to talk about how the sausage is actually made, meaning how vet medicine actually pays for itself, this is a fantastic episode. This was maybe a little bit of a long one just because I really didn't want this episode to end. I really enjoyed talking to my friend, Dr. Jules Benson, and we talk about how do we keep care affordable? And so Jules brings out some nice data about where we are, about how prices of vet medicine are going up and visits from our pet owners are going down. And what does that look like if we project it out? Spoiler alert, it's about a 40% increase in price and a 15% decrease in the number of visits. I don't think those numbers work. I think if we try to keep increasing the price at that rate, I think you're going to see a bigger drop off than 15%. But we get into it, we talk about it, and it's a really fascinating look. This is not a doom and gloom episode. Let me just say that up front. You're not going to hear us, curvetching about, everything gets more expensive and nobody's going to want to come and let us take care of their pets. Neither one of us believe that. We actually have some pretty good ideas. We think they're good ideas. We have ideas about how medicine continues to function and what happens in the future and what adjustments are made and how we adapt and evolve. And I think we end on a very, very optimistic and positive note. And so anyway, I think this is a great episode as far as being honest about the situation that we are in as a profession and looking at how we fix it. And so anyway, without further ado, let's get into this episode.
This is your show. We're glad you're here. We want to help you in your veterinary career. Welcome to the Cone of Shame with Dr. Andy Roark.
Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Jules Benson. How are you, my friend?
I'm excellent. Thank you, Andy.
Oh, man, it's great to have you here. For those who do not know you, you are the principal at Tapetum Lucidum Consulting. Principal being guy who does stuff. You're the guy who does stuff.
Chief bottle washer, CEO, all those things, everything in between.
It's you and a pile of hats that you wear.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good to be the king, but also the jester at the same time. I like that.
Yeah, it definitely keeps you humble. You get to make all the decisions because you get to do all of the work that comes from those decisions. I know that life. You and I have been friends a long time. I enjoy your insight. I think you're super smart. I really like the way that you look at the industry. You had a post on LinkedIn recently that I really liked. And so you've been actually writing a lot about things like this recently. So you had the post, the one that caught my eye was how unaffordable will vet care be in 2030? And you did a really nice job of looking at some data from VetSource. I had Sherry Gilmartin in a while ago sort of talking about their data and stuff as well. So people who listen to the podcast will be a bit familiar with kind of what that part is. But you went ahead and did the work of kind of doing some projections out into the future that I thought were really interesting. And so I wanted to talk with you about quick recap of sort of where we are as an industry, but then I really wanted to get into your crystal ball of kind of looking down the road. I love that you picked 2030 as a landmark. So saying 5 years from now, where will we be? Why don't you just go ahead and, if you don't mind, at a high level, tell me kind of what's going on in the industry and the way that you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have been talking about this for years now, and I think as we came out of COVID, and you hear like smart people like John Volk and others talk about like a return to normal, and I think that was a reasonable thing to say. Of like we hit this peak of, I don't want to say productivity, but we certainly hit a peak of kind of seeing of our time and the time we were spending and the money we were collecting through COVID. Right, it was a hard time, but there was also a time of pretty good revenue for the veterinary industry.
You're talking about like during the pandemic when we had the pandemic puppies and things like that. Yeah. Okay.
And pandemic puppies, from a data point of view, I struggle with that as well, just based on what we know about adoption, but that's a separate conversation. We definitely saw some more pets. I don't know if we saw the peak that the media call out from things like this, like a third of Americans got pets. Like, I don't think we saw that. But yes, that's just more pets. But as in the years since, and I'm really looking at 22, 23, 24, we start to see some patterns. And you and I know Dr. Amy Tinchwell, she was on my team at Nationwide, and we used to look at these numbers fairly closely and talk to Sherry Gilmartin and other pretty smart people in the industry a lot, which was this pattern of increased practice revenue and decreased visitation. And I think we started to say, is this a good pattern and how long will it last? And I think through 22 and 23, we were kind of saying, is there trouble coming down the line? Do we see the train, coming through this tunnel and starting to run over us? And I think it wasn't until I saw the data for this past year, which Sherry and the team of vets sort of shared, and it was similar data. It was that pattern again of increased increased revenue and decreased visitation. And what I wanted to do was kind of just say, okay, well, what happens if this continues? Because right now we've had 3 years clear of this. And I think if someone had said, if John Roark had said this is a return to the norm and everything else for the couple of years out of COVID, I think that makes perfect sense. But this is the third subsequent year we've seen this. And I'd love your take on, do you think that 23 and 24 were markedly different years in terms of returning to some kind of pre-COVID norms? I didn't see that in anything else that I was looking at.
I really like that you call that out. No, I think that you're right on. I think for some time, this is what it is going to be. I don't buy the idea that we've got some big backlog that's still going on today from 2021, 22. That doesn't track for me. I think it's probably about 2 years ago, a lot of the vets that I talked to and a lot of vet hospitals I engaged with started to have open appointment slots for the first time. Because it used to be, you couldn't get a slot. And I would say, well, that's backlog. Now there are open appointment slots, but I feel like they're starting to kind of level off in the number of open appointment slots we see.
And I think that was a fair comment of okay, visitation is down. Is that literally because we've reached a saturation point? That there aren't any appointments to be had and we're seeing people leave the workforce and all these other things that we hear about. Is that why we're seeing decreased visitation? Last year was 24 was the first year where I felt really comfortable saying, I don't really see any of the accompanying data suggesting that this is anything except fewer people are visiting the practice. And with our increase in revenue, the concerning part about this, and first of all, I should say, this is not an indictment of any of the practices, any veterinary practice. We know how tough it's been over the past few years. We know that many of these price increases are not things that the practice have a huge amount of control, whether that's the cost of labor, whether that's the cost of services. We know that it's been a tough, especially the last 5 years. So this is not me saying, hey, it's been a heyday for veterinary practices.
Right.
Looking at the data and saying, overall, we've had increased revenue for fewer people, which means that each one of those people are paying more.
Yes.
And that was the pattern I wanted to highlight. And I think the reason it's been able to kind of go so far without without more people across the industry raising their hand and saying, hey, I think this is a problem, it's because the revenue's been going up. That there hasn't been a lot of pain from whether it's corporate, whether it's your local independent practice, there hasn't been a lot of financial pain saying, hey, there's a real issue here that we as a business have to work out. I think there's more of a long-term. If people looked at it, they said, hey, we might have trouble if this continues. And I think this was my opportunity to say, if this continues through the next 5 years, we could be in real trouble, and what are our expectations around what people will be able to spend?
I think that you're right looking ahead. I think it to me, I think I'm worried I'm getting more cynical, Jules. So I was in Las Vegas, right? And so we were at Western Vet Conference.
Which is a place to be cynical.
Which is this breeds it breeds cynicism. It really does. So I have a friend, right? And he goes there and he goes to the Starbucks that's in the casino where the conference is. And he orders his regular Starbucks drink.
Yep. Yeah.
And he gets his regular, he gets a protein bar, right? So protein bar and a regular drink. And it costs him $9.20. Okay. That's on Sunday. On Monday, he goes back. He goes to the exact same Starbucks and orders the exact same drink and buys the exact same protein bar, and it's $16 and change. And so he gets it. And so he says to the barista, he's like, hey, man, I bought this stuff yesterday, these exact things. It was $9.20. I still got the receipt in my wallet. And the guy goes, yeah, on the weekends, the tourists come in the casino, and they don't want to chase them off, so they keep the prices low. But on Monday, we know that the only people here are business people at conferences who have expense accounts. And so we raise the prices. And I know. And I was like, again, you can see I'm becoming more cynical. I'm like, good God, capitalism in America is bananas.
Yeah, and it's like anti-stuck, right?
It really bothered me in some sort of fundamental way of boy, separating people from their money is becoming a huge national pastime. In Vegas also was the first time I was paying for something. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was like at a convenience store, right? Yeah. And I went and paid, and now I expect the tip button to pop up, right? Like, do you want to leave a tip?
Yeah.
Jules, this was the first time that there was no opt out. You couldn't say no. It was like,
No.
how much? I swear, it was the first time ever. And I looked at it and I talked to someone else who they were like, I had that same experience at the same place. And I put tip. And then I changed the numbers to 0 and hit okay. Because it was something where tipping in my mind was completely inappropriate. It was literally a convenience store where I went and got the stuff and like self-checked out. And I'm just like, this extraction of money it is everywhere. And so all that to come back around to vet medicine say, one of the things that I feel like has been going on is I feel like there has been incredible cover to raise prices in vet medicine because, I mean, I saw a thing that said, the price of groceries has gone up 58% in the States since 2020. And so I'm like, I think the price of everything are going up, and I feel like vet medicine has kind of gone along. And so I don't know, do you buy that as far as we have maybe gotten less pushback because it feels like everything is getting more expensive?
I think there's that, and I think there's also, I think the omnichannel space has been super interesting by that. The fact that people are getting more and more goods from elsewhere. And this was something like early in my career here in the US when we first started seeing Foster's and Smith and 1-800-PET-MEDS and some of those, like hearing from practice management consultants who are talking about, hey, if your ACT, if your average client transaction is going down because people are buying their frontline elsewhere, then you have to increase products and services on your side. And again, I totally understand it from an economics business point of view. But my first thought was like, how does the consumer feel about the consumer? If the consumer was previously spending $200 and now they're going to spend, they're going to go outside and spend $50 somewhere else, and they're expecting to save 60 that they were spending in the practice, and suddenly they're spending 250. I feel like that's a microcosm of what we've been doing as an industry around, like, how do we make sure that we're charging the right things in our practice and being sustainable within our practice and being practice focused as we should be. But I think that's really hard then to be client focused at the same time and say, let me understand the overall pressures on the client, when it comes even just spending on their pets.
Yeah, there's a way to do this. And so I've thought a lot about this, okay? So people have been saying the pharmacy is going away since I started as a veterinarian, right? 15 years ago, people were like, the pharmacy is gone. And so I've thought a lot about this and what it looks like. So let's just say that I'm a vet and I have a vet clinic and I have a flea and tick prevention, right? And I sell it at the practice. And just say I sell it for $50 just to keep the numbers easy. Okay. And then there's a big box retailer or an online home delivery service or whatever that's like, hey, we can sell this thing for $35. Okay. Yeah. If I give that box up, well, here's the thing. I sold it for $50. I only probably made $5 selling that thing. And so there's a scenario where the pet owner can go buy the flea and tick medicine for $35 online. I raise the price of my exam by $5, not $50, $5. Yep. The client actually pays less. I make the exact same money, and I don't have to stock and carry this thing. Yeah. And so there is a scenario where that all totally works out. You have to play with the numbers a little bit, but it is conceivable.
But I think that's a great point. Yeah, when we look at, so let's follow this 5-year trend out. So we talked about the fact that we're seeing this. It's basically plus 3% revenue year over year, and that minus, it's 2.6, like 2.5%.
So explain that out for people at home. So
So if you were in 2023, you were making $100 in 2000 and seeing, 100 clients, making $100,000 on clients. In 2024, you'd be making $102 or $103,000, and you'd be seeing, 97.5 clients for the 100 that you sold. So revenue up. Good. Everyone likes revenue up. Visits down. Nobody likes visits down. Yeah. But there are pain points. Like, it does relieve pain points of, I have more availability, I have more flexibility, and I'm still making the same money. It's a medium to long-term view that's hard for us to take as a practice, I feel like. I think it's one of those things where it's like, this feels like it should be bad, but it's not really causing me any pain points today. If we follow those things out, and so I think it's Einstein who's attributed the quote of the greatest magic in the world is compound interest. Yeah. So the same thing happens. Like, if we were to put those plus 3% revenue minus 2.6% visitation into a 5-year trend, the numbers get really scary. We talk about then saying, okay, well, if you look at our spend per pet, if we look at it from the pet owner side, the pet family side, we then say in 2030, if we were to just keep those same numbers in, and this is not, I've talked to very smart people like Matt Saloy and Clint Neal, and this is not a economic projection. This is just like, literally, if we have a linear relation between those two things and see what happens, we see the spend per pet goes up by almost 40%, 40.
In 5 years?
In 5 years.
Okay.
and the number of pets per practice decreases by 15%. So, like, again, as we look at this, and you know, as we say, this is a linear relationship. If we see the two graphs, two straight lines crossing, the reality is we probably hit some elasticity points of that somewhere in there as well. And we say that the actual pets per practice goes down even more than that straight line.
I don't think you can raise prices 40% and only lose 15% of your clients. Like, that seems amazing to me. So,
but it's over 5 years. I mean, is it the frog in the water? I mean, again, we've been seeing some of the same things over the past few years.
I saw a story recently, so I really enjoyed this. I saw a story recently about how Netflix has raised its prices. Yeah. And I don't know if you're paying attention, but if you have the no advertisements Netflix package, it's something like $28 a month now. I remember when Netflix was $6.99.
I remember when.
Yeah, I remember when it was $6.99. So the breakdown that I saw was fascinating. Yeah. And they just raised the price by like $1, $1.25. Yeah. But they did it every year for 10, 12 years. And they marched up from $7 up into the $20. And it was, you know, $1.79, $1.43, you know, and they just, by breaking it up and doing these small, steady increases, now I'm at 20 some bucks a month for Netflix. And I'm like, kids, are we actually watching this? And they're like, hey, yes, we are.
When we want to, but I think that's a great point around, like, so we don't, let's be very clear, we don't have any data currently that say the decreased visitation that we're seeing is definitely caused by the increase in prices. We don't have that.
Yes,
we can infer that, we can make that you know, suggest that that's the case, and that certainly seems what it feels like, and the economists seem to agree that that's probably the most likely explanation without any other external factors. So if we continue to increase our prices, like, this feels like, you know, this is going to continue to be a problem. And I think as we look at our clients and as we look at what are we going to have to do, and what are the options ultimately, like if we look at the basket of clients that we have in front of us, so we have the people that we have been seeing regularly, we have the people who are kind of dropping out of regular service, who are this, like, they're in that minus 2.6%, and in the previous years too. And we've got people who haven't been coming to us anyway. I don't want to lose sight of those people. I had some really good conversations with April Steele at the Colorado and the Gilbreth and her team at Charities. And Central and I, we just submitted this book chapter on stratification of care models, which I think fits into this. But one of the questions we asked very specifically was, do mainstream general practice veterinarians have any idea how many pets are out there who are not being seen? And the answer is was no. How could they? How could they know who's out there when they just don't see them?
Right.
And that's different for different practices. And I know, you know, I have people listening who be like, well, I definitely see so-and-so over here, but like the pure volume of people who don't access veterinary services is just very hard to estimate.
Yeah, no, and that makes total sense, right? You see dogs at the dog park. They're not flashing a light that says unvaccinated. Like, you have no idea. And people assume their neighbors take their pets to the vet, but they often really don't know. Like, it's an unknowable number, right? Because you've got X number of vet hospitals in sort of your geographic area, and you don't know how many pets, and it's just an unknowable number. I think we've always kidded ourselves, right? I think we all want to believe that people are doing a better job than they actually are. You see it in the old heartworm data, and they would have veterinarians estimate what percentage of your clients are actually using heartworm. It was like how to stump a veterinarian is ask them what percentage of their clients are using heartworm prevention, and then they're always going to be dismayed when you tell them it's 20%, you know?
I don't know if listeners can hear this, but I'll put an audio cue of my cat is currently up on the cat furniture behind me, I think dropping pieces of KD kibble as loudly as possible.
That's what that was. Okay. Yeah, I'm watching your cat like explore the climbing wall behind you, and I'm like, man, that's some serious feline enrichment going on in Jules's house.
He's 16 and he's going to live until he's 25. That's the deal.
This is a great time for me to mention that the podcast is available on YouTube. If you want to see Jules's cat climb the wall, you can head over there right away. Check it out.
But I think as we look at who are in our practices currently and how do we keep those people, this is a conversation you and I feel like we've had a million times. It's like, it is building trust and value. I think to suggest that, you know, mainstream veterinary practice is quote unquote in trouble, I don't think that's a fair comment. I think this year we're starting to see. In this year, it's starting to rock people back on their heels a little bit, especially some of our corporate colleagues. But I think as we look at what are the things that, and you and I talked a little bit about, are we heading into a recession? What does that mean? I think we have to, in general practice, in mainstream general practice, we have the opportunity to continue to reinforce and set that value proposition and say, this is what you're getting for your money, and this is how we're going to communicate about it, and this is how we're being client-centric, and this is how we're revolutionizing how we talk to. And so this is your bread and butter. So I would love your view on, as we go into a recession, do you ease off the pedal of, like, we talked about marketing and training and everything else. To me, that seems like exactly the wrong thing to do when we're in a situation where you have to show your value to your clients.
Yeah, no, this is okay. So we had the conversation, and I said, going into a recession, one of the first things that people cut is training, and that's just been shown again and again. It's the wrong move, but it's easy to understand, right? And so when times get tough, we say we need to cut hours. We need to, focus on X, Y, and Z, on sales, on things like that.
Productivity. Yeah.
The reality is that as times get tough, we need to be better at customer service. We need to be better at educating clients. We need to make sure we're spending good time with people and doing it in an effective way. Because, one of the defining characteristics of vet medicine is that we sell the invisible. Like, people can't, that the unvaccinated pet and the vaccinated pet, they look exactly the same. They smell exactly the same. Like, there is no obvious...
Until they have Papa, then they smell it.
Exactly. Back to cynicism. But you're right. But you get the point, right? Like, it's if they're not infested with fleas, wellness care is often invisible. Like, unless you go and flip that dog or cat's lip up and look at its gingivitis and its Still's disease, it looks the same as it used to look. And so people go, gosh, times are tough and she looks fine. We should always be aware that's the competition. It's not the vet clinic down the road that's going to take your business away. It's inaction that's going to take your business away. It always is. And so, I think that leaning into that is key. It's going to be interesting. It's funny. You look at these numbers and you sort of look at the straight, linear projections, and you go, well, that's ridiculous. No, they're not going to continue to raise prices and stuff. Jules, I don't know, because let's play this recession game. We're going into recession. We're already seeing rising interest rates. And so a lot of the organizations, the private equity investors who bought vet practices, they got money really, really cheap to buy those practices. Well, that money's not cheap anymore. The interest rates are going up, and they're going to continue. If we go towards a recession, they're going to continue to go up. They're going to way up, which means people are going to get really desperate to generate revenue and generate it fast. And I think the easiest knob historically has been the price knob. You just turn the prices up and you increase your margins and you generate more revenue. I think we're starting to see some resistance to that. And to your point, I don't think people are going to pay 40% more. And this is kind of since we're just hanging out in cynical town, I'll tell you this thing. And again,
population up.
Population us. I'm writing an article right now on rethinking the human-animal bond. And part of what I want to say, and I have to figure out how to say it in a way that people hear it, and I hope the people listening to this podcast know me well enough to kind of assume good intention on my part when I say this, but I think a lot of pet owners talk about how they love their pets and their pet is family and things like that. But when it comes time to actually write a $600 check to go to the vet for wellness care, including parasiticides, I don't know that they're going to do it. And I think as vet professionals, we want to believe, people will do what they have to do for their pets. Some people definitely will, but there's a lot of people who are trying to make ends meet. And at the end of it all, pets generally they fall in the discretionary disposable income category, meaning we spend money that we have left over on the pets.
And I think, one of my observations has been, when you talk about some of the claims they have in Europe, like the EPIC claim, which was, if you treat the dog at stage B2, which is the decompensated but silent period, right? There are these amazing upsides, on longevity and quality of life. But because the disease is silent, it's really hard to get people on board with saying, hey, we're going to get this medication. It's not super cheap, but it's really effective and have a really good, I think that goes exactly what you're saying about the wellness side of things. People find it really easy to justify spending money on things that are visible, which is why I think that whole dermatology side is still doing so well, because dermatological conditions, allergic dermatitis, they're a pain in the ass to deal with if you're a client, right?
Well, you can see it, you can smell it. You're embarrassed when your friends come over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think like there's some separation of like what are the things that we're gonna have to really double down and see value on. And I think one of the things that I like about this, I think when we talk about our corporate colleagues, I'm not worried about them. I think in the long run they have what they need to take care of themselves and to they have their great relationships on the buying side, etc. I think where I see the opportunity on the independent side. So we talk about the uncharted community, like I think smart entrepreneurial people there have such an opportunity, and it's through that agility. We talked about agile project management, but like, hey, if we decide tomorrow that we think that price transparency, for example, is one of the things that is really driving, is a need within our community. Like for us for a corporate practice to decide for that to go up the chain and down the chain and result in changes to the website, changes to the clinic, that's an enormous, and it's a change to the brand. Yes. So but for ABC Animal Clinic down the road from me, if they decide they want to go price transparent, they can do that in a week. Yeah. They can change and they can trial things. And I know that you talked a lot about change management with your training, but like there are things that you can do and you can measure the effects of. And I think in the mainstream general practice where you're having to build trust, I think there's massive opportunity. And then stepping outside that and saying, what are the needs in the community that are not being met by mainstream general practice? I think that's the other observation that I have, and you and I have talked about this as well, is that I don't think it's possible. We already talked about it with the people who aren't going to the vet already. Clearly, mainstream general practice cannot be this massive tent where we can serve everybody. And I think that's potentially getting less through just look at the economics of it. So as you look within your community, what are the other needs that aren't being met? And frankly, from an entrepreneurial point of view, as an independent practitioner, what are the things either A, you can do within your clinic, or B, you can do outside your clinic? Are there other models that we can and should be serving?
I'm super positive on vet medicine in the future. I think there could be some pain as we sort of adapt, but I was thinking last night, I got a text from my neighbor and he's got this dog, and I wrote about the dog 2 years ago. He had a splenic tumor, and I wrote about it because they were kind of on the fence about going, and they were like, you know what, we're going to do it. And
that's
they
right.
went. That dog has lived 2 more years since then. And
it was in the 15% or whatever that
exactly
hadn't right.
And it was the ultimate beautiful success story. Well, unfortunately, 2 years later, the dog has got cancer again. He's got a mass in his chest and things, and he's been sort of deteriorating everything. And so I went over there and I saw him, and I think the dog's got some internal bleeding and stuff, and it's just not doing well. And I sort of said to him, "Hey, look, guys, I think it's time." And the husband was getting ready to leave town the next day to go travel. Yeah. And so, boy, what they would have given to have, a hospice care vet, someone who could have come to their house and done this and things like that. And it's just those types of opportunities of, hey, it's the weekend that I'm looking for this. And I'm not saying independent vets have to work on the weekends, but I am saying the potential to fill niches and find the needs of your specific community. Jules, I think you're right on. I think that's really an opportunity. I think you can also you can run lean today in a way that you couldn't. I mean, the ability to do stuff just mobily is so much better than it was even 10 years ago.
And this is a construct I think is important for us to think about as veterinary medicine. So this is what's referred to as the iron triangle, right? So 3 sides of the triangle, which makes sense. So you've got cost on one side, quality on the other side, and access on the other side.
Okay.
So cost, quality, and access. If you change any one of those things, it's a dynamic relationship with at least one of the other things on the other side of the triangle, right? So if you increase cost, the chances are that access is going to go down and quality is going to go up.
Right.
If you decrease cost, you're probably going to get decreased quality, but maybe increased access. So I think as we look at veterinary medicine, I think it's really time for us to start talking about it. I see so many practices who talk about, high quality care, and that's great. I think you can be high quality and not necessarily advanced, but I think we need to be, we were talking about words earlier and how important they are. I think as we look at what it means to practice veterinary medicine going into the 2030s, I think we have to get pretty square with what is the product that we're offering and not feeling inadequate if it's not the most advanced level of medicine.
Oh yeah. I feel like we need to probably come to a close here, but I love that so much. I hate to leave it. I really love this point. I think this is the one I want to pull out here at the end and hold on to. I agree. I think for so long we have focused on high standard of care. The quality of your medicine is what defines you. This is, what it means to be a good practice is your quality of care. And the idea that you can step back and be strategic and say, we're going to objectively lower the standards or quality of care in order to provide lower cost and greater access. That's not wrong. That's not wrong. It's just a different way of doing it. And as the quality of care continues to go up and up and up in terms of what we can potentially offer, at some point we're going to have people who will make the call and say, that's great. That's not what I'm doing here. If people want that, then that's a different place. But we have got a clientele that likes what we do and the level that we operate on, and we're going to serve them unapologetically. I think that to me, it's just different how it's been, but I think it could be a beautiful future. Jules, where can people follow you online? Where can they read your writings when you put stuff like this out? And what's the best place to reach you?
So most of my stuff is on LinkedIn. So they can find me, Jules Benson, LinkedIn. And then my independent website is illuminate.vet, because Tabetum lucidum and the dark and all that stuff.
I love it. It's a whole theme. Outstanding.
Awesome thought to you as always. Appreciate it.
What a great conversation. I'm glad you're here. I'll put a link to your website and then also to your LinkedIn page. Jules, thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you again in the future. I always love our talks.
Love it. Thanks, Bob.
And that's what I got. Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks to Dr. Jules Benson for being here. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do, go and follow Jules on LinkedIn. Check out his website and his writing. He's just an interesting guy. I always enjoy getting to talk to him. You can check out my website too. I'm just putting it out there. I also have a website. It's drandywork.com. You can check it out. I write every single week. Every Friday, I write something and I email it out. And so if you join the Dr. Andy Roark newsletter, then you will get a letter from me on Fridays. And I promise that I work hard on them. And it's not AI generated. It's straight up from me. It's sometimes odd things. It's things that are important to me in my brain. I try to make them all relate back to vet medicine. Sometimes they're just thoughts and musings on life and what really matters in our time on this earth. But anyway, that's enough talk about websites. Guys, take care of yourselves, everybody. I'll talk to you later.